Today on Doomed! The first two Democratic debates are in the bag. Folks, 20 different Democrats running for president debated over the past two nights. From Joe Biden to Bernie Sanders, from Andrew, well, I guess that would have made more sense to flip it. From Joe Biden to Andrew Yang, from Bernie Sanders to Marianne Williamson. Folks, this was quite the two nights. I don't even know whether to qualify it as, I guess they were entertaining, yet at the same time, not very educational, I guess? I don't know. But we'll get into it all right now, because joining me tonight at 12:30 a.m., Friday morning, I guess, really, technically. Let me just pull him up on the feed here so you can see him. There he is. My good pal, Mike Figueredo of the Humanist Report. Mike, thanks for joining us tonight. Yes, why, thank you. Yes, thank you. Number two. Yeah. Oh, well, you... Oh, wait, hold on. I'm sorry. Let's put you back up. Apparently, didn't have you up on the mic. I could just hear you. Let's try this again. Go ahead and congratulate me once more, Mike. For people who didn't hear, because I had your mic down, foolishly. Go ahead.
So I was complimenting Matt because he just posted an adorable little family photo of his new baby daughter and his son, who is like a miniature version of him. And I just thought it was a cute photo. So congrats. I can't remember what else I said. Oh, I also said that you did a great job pronouncing my name. I'm just very pleased, Matt. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me on. Whenever you get invited back on a show, that's a really good sign that you didn't say something stupid the first time. So it's good to be here.
Oh, we will test that today, I'll tell you. But no, Mike.
Yes, we will.
Mike, so I honestly wish I could go on forever talking about me, but but there was actually something, I don't know if anyone's aware who's watching this, there was actually something that happened last night and tonight, Wednesday night and Thursday night. The Democrats got together and had their first two debates. They gathered 20 of their highest polling / highest fundraising candidates, and just so you know, that's not even all of them. 20 is not. Some people didn't even make the stage.
I was so sad that Seth Moulton was left out. That's my guy. I'm rooting for him, and he didn't even make it. It's tough. Listen, life is hard.
The only person who didn't make it that I wish did is Gravel.
Oh, yeah. That's true. Mike Gravel. I know.
Is it Gravel? I actually never even... never even looked it up.
Did you? Let me ask you this, because when I was old enough to vote for the first time, it was 2008, and I felt so horrible because I completely didn't even think about him. I overlooked him, and I was in the tank for Obama. But going back and watching those debates, I really, really wanted him included here, because that would have been amazing to see him just call out, the more terrible candidates, namely Joe Biden and anyone who's basically a fake progressive.
Right. He would have been, and from what I understand with the Gravel teens, they're basically obviously out to push the conversation even further left, but they're out to boost Bernie Sanders by nailing the attacks that they feel like Bernie can't do
That's great.
As a front runner.
Yeah, the Gravel teens are so talented. Like if I was that woke at their age, I could only imagine what I would be doing now. It would be incredible. So those kids are phenomenal. I sound like an old person. I realize I'm saying, those kids are great nowadays, but
not to go a little off topic here, but I feel like the conversation when I was their age was a lot different. I would consider myself close to being as woke, but at that time and when I was their age was the conversation was centered around the Iraq War.
Yeah.
And so we weren't really paying that much attention, actually. Obviously, electoral politics is important. But at that stage of the game, Bush had been reelected. Our hope to defeat him, John Kerry, failed. Like, there wasn't this movement there in electoral politics. It was activism, like grassroots type, just pushing against the war. So, I mean, I wasn't paying that much attention to primaries back when in the early 2000s when I was a teen in high school, because all that energy was in pushback against these wars.
Totally. And that's why I didn't even like listen to Hillary Clinton. Like back then, she was the one supporting, a single payer type plan, and Obama wasn't. Now that would actually give me pause and think, who would I support? But back then it was basically, if you voted for the Iraq war, fuck you. Obama didn't, so I'm with Obama, and go Obama. But yeah, totally different political landscape now. It's not just about the Iraq war. Now there's like 30,000 issues that we have to talk about. And now I'm just looking for the most well-rounded candidate. And you and I both know it's our brother Bernard, Right. I think he did good.
So let's segue actually into brother Bernard. I honestly was a little bit disappointed in Bernie.
I agree, and I don't want to say that, but I agree.
He didn't do bad. I want to get that. He did good.
Yeah.
But when there's 20 candidates making, we're talking about the two debates as one whole tonight. When there's 20 candidates, you can't just be good. You have to push back and fight. And he was fighting for his ideas and his beliefs and his policies, but he wasn't giving any fight in terms of pushback against people going at him. And not even just going at him. When people would say something just blatantly false or misrepresent their record, that's when you pounce. And listen, I gotta hand it to Kamala. I also want to point this out to the people who really don't like Kamala. And listen, I have my criticisms about her too, her prosecutorial record. She did not go after Bernie at all. I really do think I think there is going to be some sort of unofficial alliance in terms of where we are right now in the Democratic primary. And I think Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, and even Kamala respect each other to a point where they're not going to go at each other till they find it necessary.
Everything you said is exactly what I was thinking, and I kind of apply the same thing to Elizabeth Warren. Like, I think that they were both winners, but they weren't the winners of each of their debates. Like, I would put Bernie in the winner category, but he didn't shine as much as Kamala Harris. And here's what I said kind of going into this. I posted like a pre-debate analysis. I said that what Bernie and Warren need to do as the front runners is they just at least need to maintain. You keep pushing that message, but you don't have to do too much. You just need to make sure you don't faceplant. But what I also said was I want to see, a type of ceasefire between Bernie Sanders and Kamala Harris, because currently they have a common ally, and that's Joe Biden. And I liked the tag teaming that they did, because I think that's a really good debate strategy. They're going to turn against each other one day, but for now, you have no reason to point, the barrels at each other. You have Joe Biden who needs to be taken out, and I think they understood that. Kamala really fucking understood that. We'll be clear about that. She understood that, and I think Bernie also understood that. But I agree with you. He didn't have to do much, but I feel like there's this fine line between, just trying to maintain your position and playing it safe. He erred on the side of playing it safe, and I think you're right. Like, he has the street cred, he has the record, and he influenced all of these debates. Like, he is the reason why we're talking about Medicare for All on a national stage. So I think that if you don't brag about that, you're going to give someone like Kamala the opportunity to outshine you. And while he shouldn't attack her yet and say, well, you're a latecomer, I don't think he should do that. Still, these people are going to go up. People who are very charismatic. Kamala, even Pete Buttigieg, but to a lesser extent, Cory Booker. And so he needs to make it very clear, I'm the one who is influencing the terms of this debate. We are talking about these issues because of me. Remember that. And he didn't do that enough, so he just was more reserved. And I kind of felt like he had the same performance when he did his CNN town hall. So I don't know if you what you had to say about the Fox News town hall, Bernie. I thought he killed it. I thought he did great, because he was expecting them to bash him. And then the next week when he went on CNN, he just kind of let his guard down, and he didn't perform as well. So I think we kind of saw that Bernie here, to where he's thinking, you know what, this is early. I just got to maintain. There's enough people on the stage. I don't really need to stand out. But I think that he needs to get a little bit more aggressive. I'm not saying go offensive, yet, but Give us a little bit more. But again, I don't want to make it seem like I'm down on Bernie. I do think he was one of the winners. The people who, and I'll get your take on this too, who I think overall won in this debate were Kamala. She's the overall winner. I think Bernie was a winner because he had a lot of great spots. And towards the end, I think that Gillibrand would go into the winner category too, even if this isn't obviously an endorsement of her policies. But I think she had a lot of really great things to say about corruption and getting money out of politics. And there was no hedging. There was no, oh, let's get the dark money out of politics. She just, full stop, endorsed public financing of elections. Now, does that change the fact that she just had, a fundraiser with Pfizer executive Sally Sussman? No. So we know that she's full of shit. However, just in terms of debate performance, at this stage, you have to say the right things. And I think that these three candidates, they said enough, did enough, and were persuasive enough to stand out. But Kamala definitely knew what she was doing going in. And she's going to be a force in this race.
I got to disagree with you on Gillibrand. I think she just comes off as just not...
More rehearsed.
Yes. Yeah, she's not very natural. Even, they all have pre-prepared statements, and they all have their talking points. But you need to do it in a way, Kamala Harris was fantastic at this, at the debate, where it felt just like she was naturally talking from the heart. And, very much so, I'm sure, when she was going at Biden for the busing. My God, I'm sure that was very much from the heart. But that also wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment idea that came to her mind. She definitely came into this saying, if anything comes up with Biden, I have my own personal experience to bring up, and I'm going to bring it up.
And that was huge.
It was, listen, when Biden tries to knock you for the... He went for it. He went for the Kamala's a cop. And when I hear that and go, nah, sorry, buddy. She's, if that was anyone else at any other moment hitting her for that, I probably would have been like, oh, but that just flew over her head, did not matter at all. It was like, damn, I felt like it was very possible she ended Biden's presidential campaign right then and there. Clearly not.
I said the same thing.
Clearly not, though, but if that isn't the first drop of the... I don't know, shield or armor or whatever.
Yeah, no, you know what I said about this? I just recorded my video, my post-debate analysis. Haven't put it out, but I said that I think we're probably going to look back to this moment as either the beginning of the end or the moment that was really the start of, well, I guess that's the same thing, but it was the beginning of the end for Biden, essentially, where he was already kind of dropping. So it wasn't like he was going to do much better. I think really his strategy of just hiding his face that's kind of smart. But during a debate, you can't hide. So she put all of his dirt front and center, and he didn't know what to do. Now, if I'm advising Joe Biden, I just tell him to drop out. But if I really was getting paid to tell him how to respond to that, I would tell him, look, you have to fucking apologize. Don't try to...
he's refusing, even on the debate stage where he's called out in front of a woman who's literally saying your beliefs would have literally made it. I would not be on the stage tonight if what you want, because of what you wanted. It would not have happened. My life would have been different for the worse. You would not know my name. I would not be here. And even in the face of that, he couldn't even be like, wow, I'm gonna eat my own shit and grin and bear it and say I'm sorry. He would not even do that. It was stunning.
It was embarrassing. And did you notice when he cut himself off when he was defending himself, and then he said, "I'm out of time," and then he stopped talking?
Oh, right, because he was looking for anything to get out of his. He was looking for an out, and there it was. Although that is going to be clipped. I guarantee you. Biden saying, "I'm out of time," or it's. People are going to say, yeah, you're out of your time's up, buddy.
I already retweeted one person saying that.
Right. And, I actually think that Bernie and Elizabeth Warren sort of had the same energy, the same sort of debate presence comparatively. I really do think that. But the terms of each debate that were set by who was on the stage made it so Elizabeth Warren could do that and let all those nobodies duke it out, and she just looks like the grown-up in the room. But Bernie couldn't do that same tactic on the stage he was on because it was a bunch of everybody. It was a bunch of not nobodies, people who were leaders in this sort of race. battling out, and he couldn't just sink back and let them go at it. He needed to jump in. So, but then at the same thing, as I say this, I see Warren supporters who I really want to get this, say this as clearly as possible, because it's going to come up a lot in the next year. I like Elizabeth Warren a lot. She is my second pick to Bernie Sanders. Obviously because she's a woman, and I would really not like a woman to be president, clearly. No, it's legitimate reasons why she's my second pick and not my first. But there are the same legitimate reasons as why she's my really strong second pick. But my sort of what I'm about to say is about her supporters, a very specific subset of her supporters who are obviously going to use my criticizing them as us attacking Elizabeth Warren, which I would like to say right now is absolutely not true. But there's this weird Warren supporter contingent who is just out for blood for Bernie, obviously because they see him as in her path to victory, and vice versa for Bernie too. And I'm sure there's a contingent of Bernie supporters who feel the same way. Sure. But there's a subset of Warren supporters who are just lying, just about Bernie apparently not having plans for these things Elizabeth Warren's coming up with, or Elizabeth Warren manufacturing these ideas out of thin air, and that Bernie never put these same things forward 40 years ago. It's just bullshit, and it just bothers me immensely. And this is not criticism of Elizabeth Warren. But that aside, what I'm getting at here is, at the same breath of me saying Bernie needed to be stronger and more on the attack, I saw so many reactions tonight from the anti-Bernie people on Twitter saying how, man, Bernie is so aggressive. Look at that white male ego on him. It's like, are you kidding me? Bernie was probably at his like most backed off calmest tonight. He was super tame tonight. Are you kidding me? Like, the idea that Bernie Sanders was violent tonight. Are you out of your... And there's that clip of... This very funny clip of Biden, backing off at Bernie's finger or whatever. But people are passing that around as oh, Bernie's invading Biden's space. You're gonna really say Bernie's the one in the space invader when comparing him with Joe Biden? Are you kidding me? Are you serious right now?
I'm not buying that.
Right? Are you kidding me right now? There's a difference between talking with your hands, which, listen, as someone who's a New Yorker with both Italian and Jewish blood through my veins, I talk with my hands, all right? It's a thing that I just have grown up to do. I was raised to do. But the idea that that's the same as touchy-feely Joe Biden who doesn't respect people's space, please.
Yeah, that's absurd. Please. That's absolutely absurd. But yeah, I've noticed, the people who attacked Bernie a lot in 2016, there's a lot of those same people who support Elizabeth Warren now, and it doesn't make sense to me. I actually engaged with someone who hates Bernie on Twitter, but loves AOC, and I tried to ask, because this doesn't make sense. Ideologically, they're the same. I mean, AOC is probably to the left of Bernie. So how do you how is it that you can rationalize this when it's seemingly irrational, right? And basically they just said, well, it's about race. She's more conscious of race. So I think maybe the way that they're rationalizing support for Bernie, or for Warren rather, over Bernie, is on that issue. But I think that overall they're looking for reasons to be angry at Bernie and portray him in a negative way, like the hand gestures. Of course, that's not him being aggressive. No matter what he does, there's going to be a contingent, the 8% of the Democratic Party base, that they're just going to shit on him no matter what. But I don't think that the average voter is going to even care about these little gripes that they keep bringing up. And I find it hypocritical that they are going out of their way to attack Bernie, when I think that Bernie supporters like you and I, we've kept it relatively civil, because I think that the progressives in this race, there's no reason for us to take swipes at, each other. I don't think that Warren and Bernie should go at it. And I don't think Tulsi should be taking on Bernie or anything. If it narrows down, sure. But right now, I don't see why they're doing that. And they're the ones who are being overly aggressive, but they're projecting and they're accusing Bernie and the Bernie bros of doing that one. It's just bullshit. But you said that Warren was your strong second. I wanted to get your take on why that is, because for me, I've really waffled on this back and forth. Because Bernie's my strong number one, and there's some solid difference between him and my 2 and 3, but I have it tied between Warren and Gabbard, and I don't know who I like more. I've gone back and forth. Warren got a boost because of her just coming out swinging for Medicare for all, but then I also think about how weak she is on foreign policy, and I just keep going back and forth. So what is it that like put Warren over the edge for you? Because I'm a complete like fence sitter on this, and I don't know if there's one issue that's going to drive me in either of their directions. I might just have to, the field might just have to thin out for me to decide.
Well, I think that when it comes down to it, well, I have my problems with Gabbard, and I feel like she is not exactly the best.
I have criticisms of her too, to be clear, and Warren, but it's just tough to, who's number 2
to
for
me. To me, Gabbard is someone who is a good ally to have in the House. I actually really don't think she's progressive.
Really?
She's maybe progressive in certain areas, but I wouldn't classify her, like if I was going to make a list of people on the left in like elected office, she's not really like, maybe because of how the U.S. ideological spectrum is, she'd make that list, but like, Warren has a long history, and I know Warren was a Republican back in the 90s, and I'm sure she'll be hit for that, and she should, frankly, because some of the things I've read about it and the weird way that whole part of her life has sort of been disappeared, like it's been like no one talks about it. And I did read this article about some of her, and I don't want to bring it up now because I want to get a little bit more into it. It was way too vague.
Right, I know. I brought us down a complete rabbit hole. So.
But Warren, since becoming who she is, a progressive, she has been who she says she is. She has, just look at all those videos of her schooling like Wall Street executives and bank CEOs at these hearings. She's legit. I will say this, though. It is hilarious to me that the same people who knocked Bernie Sanders for being one note in 2016 back Warren, who is by far more one note than Bernie Sanders ever was.
That's
Elizabeth
so true.
Warren is one lane her entire career. It's a very important lane. I happen to appreciate that lane because it very much affects income inequality and where we are economically. And that's the big banks and the financial executives. It has been her single focus. It is all she's really been known for. Look up Warren on race issues. She is absent. Nowhere.
Yeah.
Look up Warren on climate change. Maybe there's words of support here and there, but in terms of activism, strong backing of candidates, strong backing of policies, nowhere. And this is, again, if you're someone like Warren, I totally get why you would have this single lane. This was her bread and butter as a professor. This is her thing. She knows it better than anyone. Bernie has used her work in terms of bolstering his own beliefs that he held concurrently, but her work has been able to also back up that stuff. That's why they're such good friends. They are on the same page with this stuff. Like they back each other up because they believe each other and they know each other. But the idea that Warren does not have these same issues and she's some sort of woke person that is better than Bernie and all this, where? Show me where. It is unbelievable to me that these same folks who attacked Bernie for this stuff are now all in for Warren without any sort of constructive criticism saying Warren's got to be better on this. Because what I remember is that there was no talk about Bernie being weak on this stuff at all. But in 2015, the Black Lives Matter movement was still growing, and those two women at that event interrupted Bernie, which set off this whole thing. And I thought it was good. I thought regardless of your opinion on those two women who have some of their own weird political background,
the Net Roots one was the one that I really thought was great.
Yes. And to me, we should be pushing all these candidates to be better on race issues, gender issues, economic issues. On every one of these issues, we should be pushing all of them, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren included, further left. Because they're not left enough at all to where they should be, as even the leftmost of our candidates.
Right.
But so I would get into little debates with Bernie Sanders fans when I worked at the Majority Report on air, callers saying, "No, this stuff is good. We should be pushing Bernie further left on this." But then as the primaries continued on and just came down to Hillary and Bernie, this stuff was weaponized to act like Bernie Sanders was some sort of a white supremacist, racist, who fled Vermont to get away from black people, which is incredible to me. You want to say Bernie Sanders is weak on race issues? That's fine. I could even agree with you on many different points there. To say he's some sort of racist who fled because he didn't want to help, it's disgusting, frankly. It is gross, especially when he's now on stage with people. I can't think of a single... All the things you want to say about Hillary Clinton, you must give her credit. And, of course, it's helped to be in the spotlight for years and to have her husband being Bill Clinton, who helped, have these connections throughout. But she was there, and again, you could bring up policies that hurt these communities. That's fair game, too. But she was visible to them. The black communities in this country felt like they knew Hillary Clinton. They had some sort of connection to her, and that's why they liked her, and that's why they trusted her. Overall, in terms of, can't speak for all African Americans.
Name recognition was also really huge too.
Right.
Like if you don't know someone, then why would you go with someone who you're unaware of?
Right. But at the same time, I will give Hillary Clinton credit because she ingrained herself in these communities, and she had years to build up this repertoire because she's been running for different offices for years, which she had over Bernie, who basically was just running for office for U.S. Senator from Vermont. But, that to her credit, that's what she had. There is no one like that this time around. There is no one who has that leg up. And in fact, time and time again, polls have shown that this time around, Bernie Sanders has one of the best polling with people of color in this country, African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans. And yet, all of a sudden, this Bernie Sanders bad on race stuff still permeates, yet it happens for nobody else. I guarantee you this shit with Buttigieg tonight, where he went and basically said to the face of black people in his town who were protesting the police killing of a black man, he went and basically said, I'm not out to win you over. If Bernie Sanders said that, you would have seen basically them saying Bernie Sanders might as well. When I say, you would have seen the media, you would have seen the anti-Bernie contingent across, the Democratic spectrum, basically saying, Bernie Sanders should put on a KK robe if he's going to say shit like that. But with Buttigieg, I've already seen Jen Rubin over in Washington Post saying Buttigieg was one of the winners tonight with an asterisk saying except on race. Imagine calling someone in a Democratic primary a winner in a debate, but adding the addendum, they blew it on race though. What? Yeah. Are you kidding me? You blow it on race, you might as well fucking pack your bags and head back home because you ain't going nowhere in a Democratic primary, buddy. It is a joke. Yeah. A joke.
If you can't get what Democrats are good at, which is social issues, then why would we vote for you? Like, that should just be by default, you're good on social issues, you're good on race and gender. But if you can't be good on that, then what are you doing? So yeah, I totally agree. It's a double standard. Whatever somebody else does, however horrible they may be on certain issues, Bernie will always be hit 10 times more for it. And I think we both know it's because he's like a true threat to the status quo and the establishment. So they have that. First of all, it's that elite bubble that a lot of these people, they live in D.C. and they just all kind of think the same and they're all sniffing each other's farts. So they all hate Bernie, So it's that. And I also think he is the one true threat, to the status quo, which is why Third Way is trying to warm up to Warren more because, if somebody is going to win who's progressive, I guess we can deal with Warren. And it's irritating. And then when we call it out, though, we end up looking like we are overly defensive and we just can't shut the fuck up. It's you can't win basically in terms of messaging in this Democratic Party primary because people are out to tank Bernie by all means necessary, even if they're bad faith attacks. And it's frustrating. I feel your pain there.
It's really and it's incredible to me. To me that he's still being knocked as some sort of sexist. Oh, the idea. Oh, that clip. It's just Oh, I'm gonna go off again.
Do it.
That clip where he's asked point blank, why do you think Warren is starting to gain over you, to your detriment in the polls in terms of, she's going up and you're stagnant and or even losing a little bit of support. And he says there are many reasons why, being two people who are practically the same on the issues, and he said, there's a contingent who in the Democratic Party who would very much like to see a woman president, and he completely understands that. And he was attacked for that. Are you kidding me? That is a statement of fact. It is factual. He was not saying, oh, she's only doing good because she's a woman, or he was saying, oh, it's not fair, I'm doing bad because I'm not a woman. If he said that shit, of course pillory him and attack him. That would have been ridiculous. He is saying that when two people are the same on everything and they're both doing different in the polls, they're obviously different factors that other people want. I mean, he's not even saying Warren is a woman and that's why she's doing well. He's saying there are people who just want to see a woman president, and he even adds, and I agree with him, I get why you would support Warren over Bernie if you like them both. And one of the things that factor in is that she's a woman and you'd like to see a woman president in your lifetime. I'm not going to attack you for that. That's a legit reason. I don't agree with it for me personally, but I totally get it. And I'm not going to attack you for that.
Yeah, no, and part of the problem is they'll logically connect dots that don't exist. So if he says, well, people want to see Warren, then they'll jump to, oh, well, the assumption must mean that you think that you have an advantage when you're a woman. So that means you must be minimizing all of these disadvantages that women face when it comes to, these sexist attacks on the way that they dress and the way that they speak. So they just kind of like jump from one conclusion to the next when they don't have enough evidence to back up their initial claim. And it's like this snowball effect where it just gets down to the conclusion of, oh, it's obviously because he thinks, she has ovaries or something. Like, I don't know if you saw that headline. I can't remember the exact wording, but it was something along the lines of Bernie Sanders thinks Elizabeth Warren is surging because she has ovaries, completely just misrepresenting him. And I wish I could remember who pointed it out. I didn't cover this on my show, but I listened to somebody else talking about this. Maybe it was Ben Dixon. I'm not sure. But just completely absurd. And it's like you can't make these logical jumps unless you have evidence. We are in a time when people do want to see more descriptive representation. That's not something that you're sexist for pointing out. You're just saying, look, we've had like 45 male presidents. People want a woman president. That's not controversial. It's just a fact, like you said. Right. But yeah, it's just for Bernie Sanders, there's something about him where they have to go after everything and, pick at everything he says and overanalyze it, really.
Like, just go log online, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you want to go, and log into any sort of, democratic, like your basic normie liberal democratic audience. And you will see countless posts saying, I really wanted to come down to Kamala and Warren because I feel like it's a woman's turn. I get it. I totally get it. I'm not even attacking that. He's simply stating that's the facts, that some people like Bernie, like Warren, like Kamala, like Biden, and I'm sure if you're a normal, a Democratic, a Democrat who doesn't really pay attention to politics, like the majority of Democrats probably are, they work and they watch the debates, and and they go out and vote. That's their whole. They're not in this political bubble like we are. They see all these people. They probably have a good feeling for all of them, but there's a portion of them who will go, yeah, but I think it is, I think it would be great to see a woman defeat Donald Trump. So I'm going to go with Warren. I'll go with Kamala. And that's factoring into their decision. That's not an attack. That's a statement of fact. There's proof online of people saying this. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, what is all this like? There's literal movements. The Women's March, literal movements saying it's. There's literal like get out the vote campaigns, run for something. Emily's List has been doing this for years. Yeah. There's literally like organizations to say, if there's a woman running and she's a Democrat and she's a progressive or she's a whatever, a liberal, we're going to fight to get this person elected to office because we need more women in elected office, which I completely agree. Yeah. But that's the statement of fact.
Yeah, no, the assumption, and this is what I honestly think people believe we believe, is that we support Bernie more because he's a male, and it's just this subconscious bias when really this is about policy differences. Like I firmly believe that descriptive representation, getting representation for marginalized communities, women, is crucial. It's important. However, substantive representation is super important. You have to get someone in there who's going to do the most policy wise for these communities. Now, in the event somebody was running like Bernie Sanders who had all the same policies, and was female, I think that would be great. I'd probably support that person over Bernie if they were identical politically, just because I agree also with descriptive representation. But I think that nuance is lost, as you said, like on these normal voters who they don't really view it that way. It's just very black and white, matter of fact, Warren and Bernie are the same. So if you support, Bernie when you could support Warren, then obviously it must be due to sexism. So I think that because people might make that assumption if they don't really know, if they're not savvy, then, these strategists and media pundits, they kind of exploit that and weaponize it to their advantage. And they're doing it effectively. Like, they do a relatively good job, but I just don't know if it's going to be enough to, like, tank Bernie. They tried last time, and he still kind of persisted regardless of all of those smears. But it's so frustrating. So I totally, I get what you're saying, because we've been dealing with this now for how long? Since 2015? Like, the same line of attacks, just copy paste. 2016, same in 2020, and it's just, I'm bored at this point. Like, let's talk about policy. Let's move past this.
It's also like, listen, the attacks, as ridiculous as they were in 2016, you could say they worked, because if you looked at how people voted and how the election turned out and how the polls were shown, Hillary Clinton was more popular with overall. Obviously, there's polls that show, and I believe many polls show, and the votes turned out to be this way, that people of color under the age of like 45 actually went for Bernie. The problem is that older people of color come out and vote in much higher numbers than younger people of color. Yeah. So it just skewed those results in favor of Clinton, not in favor of her period, but further in favor of her. Like it didn't give Bernie more of an accurate sort of thumb on this where he really lied with certain groups. But now when you have people like Joe Biden on stage opining for the days where he was getting along with segregationists, and you have Pete Buttigieg on stage who is failing his community, and there's more than just this police shooting. There's this hidden tape that I'm dying to find more about. Where the black police chief in his city, his town, he got fired from his job, I believe, by Buttigieg, for standing up against racist remarks made against him by other people in the force. That's what I believe the rumors in this hidden tape are. Also, there's these stories of Buttigieg, when becoming mayor, trying to clean up. I'm doing the quotations for people listening to the podcast. His town, and by clean up he means go after the poor people who apparently who lived in what seems to be plurality people of color areas in his town, who apparently couldn't afford to spruce up their homes or something like that, and seek to foreclose on them or something that effect. I'm just basically not. I don't want to go too far into it without having I want to get further into this, and we'll talk about it then. But there's all these things I'm seeing about Buttigieg, and all you see is, oh yeah, he's really impressive to me, this young guy. Move over, Bernie Sanders, you racist old white man. Pete Buttigieg is. Are you kidding me? Like, all right, let's move on before I pop a vein. To me, the most.
Well, you want to know? Hang on, I have a good segue into the debates, because you want to know how Bernie gets accused of all of this. How was Eric Swalwell, who constantly kept saying "pass the torch" and making these ageist arguments against Biden and Bernie, how is that not going to be called out? I mean, the debate just ended, so maybe people in the party who often denounce Bernie, maybe they'll denounce Eric Swalwell as well. But I mean, these people get a pass, and it's so frustrating when Bernie, he would never get a pass for that. If he made any argument that even had a hint of ageism or sexism whatsoever, he would get denounced. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't get denounced, because if he said something I genuinely thought was tone deaf, I would call him out for that. Like, I disagreed with him when he was talking about reparations, because I think that he came across as, just not educated, not knowledgeable, and tone deaf. So I called him out, and I think he's kind of started to improve. So I'm not saying he's above criticism, but I am saying that Bernie doesn't get the deference that other candidates get. And that's the source of your frustration, I think. And I feel it too. Although I feel like I've become desensitized to it to a degree, only because, like I said, we've been putting up with this now for so many years that it's just not surprising. It's not shocking.
Right. To me, this is what I struggle with. You see that phrase all the time where Twitter's not real life. And to an extent, I agree with that in terms of Twitter, more so than any other social network, is very political. You have, an activist set, a very politically inclined subset of the American electorate on Twitter, using Twitter on a daily basis. We live in a bubble on Twitter, without a doubt. Twitter is not representative of all of real life. However, what you're seeing more and more is that Twitter is real life in a sense, because you're seeing these left candidates like AOC, Ilhan Omar, Tiffany Caban in Queens. Queens represent. And you would see on Twitter that these people are rising, and they're gonna win. You could see that on Twitter. But then you talk to people who are not on Twitter, who are just locally, and they're like, oh, that AOC has no chance. Oh, Caban has no chance. There was to speak to about Tiffany Caban, who just won the Queens District Attorney race as a Democratic socialist. I was reading an article in a local Queens paper, basically saying that the third place candidate, this guy Lasik, who was the moderate in this Democratic race, who was the only one who was running on this tough on crime, old school type, like DA. His supporters on election night, they were there. This small paper was there at his election night party, and they were in shock, thinking he was going to win. They could not believe he was not even close. A distant third to Melinda Katz, who was the second place contender, and Caban. And I'm just thinking to myself, anyone who was paying attention to this race online, you could know as clear as day that it was a two-person race between Katz and Caban. But these people were not very online, so they didn't know this. So I don't know anymore in terms of, is Twitter real life? Is Twitter not real life? I think you just have to, look at it on a case-by-case basis, really. But back to Swalwell. You're absolutely right. This guy's a joke. A joke. He was up there. I
hate him.
He was up there. I said he was the most annoying person on the stage tonight, and I stand by that. Yeah. Even with people like Hickenlooper on there, who were every point they could make attacking socialism. Even with those people on there, even with Buttigieg on there, even with Andrew Yang on stage, the most annoying person tonight was Swalwell. Just a little twerp. This guy was so annoying. All he ran on was the fact that he's young. He really thinks, and the funny thing was, right before we went live, I was watching the post-debate coverage on MSNBC, and Claire McCaskill was on. Claire McCaskill. She was on there, and she was saying how, listen, this is what I think happens tonight. I think Kamala pulls from Joe Biden support. Absolutely agree. Right on, McCaskill. Wow, what you got? Where did you all of a sudden become a political pundit with knowledge on the issue? And then she follows it up with, and I think Buttigieg and Swalwell take support from Bernie Sanders. What a joke! I immediately thought to myself, well, she's still Claire McCaskill. Are you kidding me? Listen, I'm going to make this wager. I'll bet any amount of money on it right now, no matter what happens in the Democratic primary, whether Bernie Sanders is the nominee, which I do believe he will be, or he does not become the Democratic nominee. I will make this wager. Regardless of how he lands, he will once again be the most popular young person candidate in this race, bar none. It won't even be close. He is going to run away with the youth vote. And if young people turn out like they did in 2018, young people will make the difference, and they will make Bernie Sanders the Democratic nominee. That's the difference between now and 2016. The 2016 youth vote was good, but it wasn't the levels it was in 2018. And I think that if we could get those levels, and I think actually being that this election will more closely be attached to the idea that it's our chance to vote out Donald Trump specifically. I think it will be. If those young people turn out, Bernie Sanders will win. Because his young people support is so, like, it's not even close. It's just leans so. The fact that anyone would think that going up there and saying, "I'm young, vote for me," will take away from 78-year-old Bernie Sanders' overwhelming youth support is a joke. It's just unbelievable to me. It's just, and the thing I always bring up, and it kills me when I see this online, is the same people who say, "The youth are our future. Move over, Bernie. It's time for young people to take over." Well, who? Your flavor of the week young person who has Democratic Party power brokers behind him, who is not representative of everyday young people? Or the Democratic base youth who are saying, "We want Bernie. We want Bernie." Why can't you hear that they're saying, "We want Bernie"? I mean, I just want to put this out there once again. In 2016, Bernie Sanders didn't just win the youth vote. He became the most popular young person candidate in modern history. And I say modern because it's an addendum you have to make because the way polls are taken nowadays. But just by the way, population growth works, I believe it's fair to say this as well. He was the most popular young person candidate in history, period. He blew away, and this is not me saying that. Vox, we all know, have their moments of being hard on Bernie Sanders. Vox in 2016 looked at the numbers and said, not only if you combine Hillary and Trump's youth vote totals, does Bernie Sanders blow that out of the water? He even surpasses Obama's youth vote total. And that was before, they even said this themselves, that was before the Democratic primary in 2016 was even over. So, I mean, I don't know what else to say in terms of people who think Bernie Sanders is too old and young people are clamoring for a young person to take over.
It's absurd.
It's just, Go ahead.
Just based on personal anecdotes, I know anecdotes aren't everything, but I have a lot of nieces and nephews who are like college age. None of them are very political, but they all know who Bernie Sanders is, and they all support Bernie Sanders, and they've registered to vote because of Bernie Sanders. Like, this is something that they don't realize, that if you want to pass the torch, then you have to pass it to the torch of the candidate who is supported by young people. But out of all of this like bullshit that we heard from Eric Swalwell, pass the torch, guys. My favorite part, and I don't know if you caught this because it was quick, Marianne Williamson is the one who basically made him eat shit. She told him, just because you have a young body doesn't mean you don't have old ideas. And he stopped saying it after that. Marianne Williamson, she was a moment. She
was a pleasure tonight. She
was.
It would be great to just have her on the stage as just sort of like a palate cleanser throughout the debates. Yeah. Like just have her once she's eliminated, just still have her on there, have her in a corner, and like just like there's the lineup of the people who are still in, and then just like have Marianne Williamson like sort of like off to the side. And after every few questions, maybe like every 20-30 minutes, we just cut to her and get her feelings on it. And I would love to hear about the orbs, and I'd love to hear about how love is the way, and we will kumbaya Donald Trump out of the presidency. And you know what? I will say this. If Cory Booker said that, I would laugh him off the stage. And he basically is saying that. He's portraying himself as love is the answer, kumbaya. But the thing is, Cory Booker is a sitting U.S. senator who believes he has a chance and wants to become president. I think Marianne Williamson believes in her head this is the truth too. But let's be honest, she is a legit hippie. Yeah. She's saying this, and she's not gonna win. She's not gonna. But it's a just nice to hear this stuff. I sort of liked it. I thought it was endearing. Again, if it was coming from someone who believes they have a legitimate chance and may very well have a legitimate chance down the road, I would obliterate it. But coming from her, it was. I liked it. Good for her. I'd much rather hear that coming from her than spend any time hearing Andrew Yang talk about how automation is going to just
the same fucking talking points
and
the same.
I also feel
Marianne.
Go ahead.
She basically had my favorite moment of the night when she looked dead in the camera and she said, "Mr. President, I will harness love politically." And in her mind, she was like, mic drop, boom. That moment was so special to me, and it's going to live in my heart for years to come. She's a national treasure. And you know what? What I said going into this was, look, you can't come with this love nonsense. You need to have some policy. She actually did kind of bring some policies. Like, she brought up reparations, which I loved. She also mentioned, our foreign policies with regard to Latin America and how that influences migration and whatnot. So she had the substance, but she also sprinkled in, a little bit of love. I'm feeling the Williamson. I don't know the replacement for feeling the burn, but
feel the orb. Feel the orb.
Orb. If she doesn't, as long as she doesn't get into like the anti-vax territory, then I'm okay. Just don't keep that shit at the door. Right.
Listen, if Marianne Williamson starts rising in the polls, then my opinion will change. But where she? I don't believe that's gonna happen. But who knows anymore? But where she is, you know what? Even if she started pulling at like 5%, I would. If she started just knocking people out of the like legit people, like if Hickenlooper and like Bennett and I don't know who were some people on the first night, Tim Ryan, Bill de Blasio. If these guys started getting knocked out, John Delaney, if they started getting knocked out by Marianne, I would love it. I would love it. I will say one thing I won't give her a pass on is that bizarre line where we have to talk if we're going to defeat Trump, we have to start talking about substance. And these people up here are wasting their time getting into the nitty-gritty about policy. Marianne, I think you were smoking the orb or whatever, a little bit too much at that point. I think the CBD, whatever it is, I don't even know what I'm talking about. I think all that shit wore off as she went on, and once she got past that, she was good. But that line was just, there were some moments that were like, had me scratching my head, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, I was like, go Marianne. Right. She was all over the place, I feel like. Right, yeah. And let's start, we spent a lot of time on the front runners. Let's talk about really quickly some of these losers at the bottom of the ranks here. For a quick recap, I think, to talk about who I think won the night, if we want to talk Chris Cillizza territory here. Night one, I think the best performance was probably Castro and Booker, simply because they had to put themselves out there. I didn't think they were very good personally, but in terms of just like owning the sort of debate and getting their voice out there, they did their job, what they set out to do. Elizabeth Warren obviously did very well. Basically, I think she could have put herself more forward, but I guess she didn't need to, being on the stage with those losers, and she's clearly gained the most from that night. So I guess her strategy really did pay off. It worked. Again, that strategy worked that night. Bill de Blasio, I thought, also was pretty good that night.
I put him in first.
Yeah, even though he has no chance, and that Bill de Blasio you saw last night, I can tell you as a New Yorker, does not exist once he gets into office. Yeah, he is not that person in office. I remember he was a nobody in the mayoral race when Bloomberg was the mayor. He was not anywhere close to winning. Bloomberg had his second in command. He was promoting her, and she was going to run away with it. And then he started activating the New York grassroots. He got arrested protesting a hospital foreclosure with Cynthia Nixon, and he suddenly became the front runner and became mayor. He was a legit progressive. But this guy, apparently, once he gets into office, he gets wooed by the real estate magnates and the donor class, and he apparently, from what I hear from insiders, not insiders talking to me, but reports with insiders, is that he set out to actually really in his heart wanted to do these changes, but systematically once he got into office he realized he couldn't do it. The old guard that the police who hate him, by the way, even though they think he's some sort of super far left mayor, and he's not. He apparently got dismayed by not being able to do any real change he wanted to do, and has become sort of this lame duck mayor who sucks. Very disappointing, and this is coming from someone who voted for him twice.
Yeah.
Listen, though, if that's the case, why be a loser and just walk around with your shoulders slumped, He should be out there saying, this is why I can't enact this stuff. He should shine a light on what's going on. But
yeah.
Apparently the new thing is that he's running for president because he's literally bored of being mayor. Which,
seriously?
I'm sorry, if you're bored of being mayor of New York City, listen, there's governors who don't have as much power as the mayor of New York City does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Literally the only other office I can think of that has more probably power in this country is the president. But if you're bored of being the mayor of New York, then you should just, I don't know, buddy. But, so Bill de Blasio I thought did well, but that guy doesn't exist, so
he's full of shit. So definitely he's full of shit.
The point there is there's this moot, So,
yeah.
The polls say Elizabeth Warren is running away with the first night, and Booker and Castro are rising. I think that's a fair assessment based on what we've seen. Now, the polls, obviously...
I agree.
Tonight, it was just, tonight, so we don't know what the next day polls say.
Well, but, you know who was trending #1 on searches?
Who?
It was our girl, Marianne Williamson. And apparently on Google Trends, Kamala and Gillibrand were pretty high. I can't remember who else was up there. I think Hickenlooper was one of them that was pretty high, which he's not the highest, but he's like in top 3 or 4. It has to be just because people were curious of how dumb he was. I can't believe that anyone was like, oh, this Hickenlooper guy, he's really on it. Because I think he made a fool of himself, so it had to be for bad reasons. Joe Biden, what was I looking at with him? I think he also was trending for like the second half. I'm not 100% sure on this, so don't quote me, but I had to have thought because he was tanking. So, yeah, the second night, here's who I had for losers. I don't know if you'd agree with this. I had Biden as like the biggest loser, only because he had the most to lose and he needed to not face plan. He just needed to maintain, and he didn't. I also had Hickenlooper in this category. And then I also put Andrew Yang in this category reluctantly. And I say reluctantly because I contradicted myself. Like going into this, I said, look, all Andrew has to do, I think he'll have the easiest time. As long as he gets like 1 minute to do his UBI spiel, he's going to do fine. But he did that, and then it wasn't enough. Like he faded into the background. He didn't jump in on anything else.
I saw how much he talked for. 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, that's not good.
I think that's less than anyone on either night.
It is.
There's no reason for you to talk for only 2.5 minutes. Even the people at the bottom of the ladder. I think Bill de Blasio actually, for as much as people think he talked the first night, he was at the bottom for minutes talked. He was at the bottom of the list on night 1 for total minutes talked. But because he constantly jumped in, even though he didn't talk for very long and had things of substance to say, he sort of stuck out to people. Andrew Yang was called on once to basically explain who he was and what the UBI, his idea was. Mm-hmm. And he did that, and that was it. He sat back and said, either in his mind he said, oh, I'm not being called on, so I'm not going to interrupt, which then this guy shouldn't be here, because if he's not going to put himself forward, then I don't know what he's doing. Or second, he didn't have any position, so he didn't know what to say, which again, get the fuck out then. You don't belong here.
I was shocked because I thought that it would be enough if he just made his spiel so people can look up, okay, what is this UBI? I'll check it out. But he wasn't his usual self, like, because I think he's a really nice, like, I think he's pretty charismatic. He's a nice guy. He comes off as super intelligent, but he didn't even seem like peppy as he usually is in promoting UBI. And I'm sure it was because he was nervous, because he's not like a politician. He's never been on a debate stage. But I mean, he had, like, if you're Andrew Yang right now, you have to be putting other policies front and center. You can't only run on UBI. because that obviously wasn't enough for him in this debate. And part of the problem with Andrew Yang is that he keeps changing like what his UBI is. Like, I don't know if you saw, I brought him on my show and I talked about UBI with him. And the question that I posed to him was, are you worried that your UBI can be used as a Trojan horse to gut social safety net programs? And he literally said, I'm one of the last people that will want to gut social safety net programs. Then he goes on Ray Dubin's show and he says, no, that's the goal is to gut social safety net programs. So, I mean, it's like, he's one of those people where he is malleable. Like he'll tailor his message to the person who he's talking to. So I thought that just him being likable would help him, but it was all flat. And he does, like, to his credit, like, I'm not an Andrew Yang supporter. But he has some good ideas that he could have like brought up that set himself apart. Like, I believe he believes in lowering the voting age to 16. That's something you could promote that would excite young people. There's ranked choice voting. So he has a couple of things that could have helped set himself apart besides the UBI. And I was honestly surprised because I didn't think he would perform that poorly, just based on personality, because you can't really gauge somebody on a debate based on anything other than performance, because even if somebody is more substantive and you agree with them, they can still come across as, you know, the better or the worst debater if somebody else outshines them. Like, for example, I thought Kamala was the better debater tonight, even if I agree with Bernie more. So I just thought that Andrew Yang was a little bit more charismatic, and I don't know. I was shocked. I was a little bit stunned by that.
Right. If you were to tell me, out of the two like weird, out of place candidates who really have no political background, Marianne Williamson and Andrew Yang, if you were to tell me that on debate night, one of those candidates were going to forcefully get themselves into the conversation, make sure their voice is heard, and another one was going to sit back twiddling their thumbs, I would have guessed it would absolutely be Andrew Yang getting himself in there and Marianne Williamson sort of spacing out, playing a flute in the background or some shit like that. I mean...
But they flipped it. The opposite happened, because I thought that too. I'm like, Marianne Williamson, I didn't predict her going anywhere. Like, I thought she would get one or two questions and she'd talk about love and orbs. But she completely caught me off guard. Like, I was expecting Andrew to be the one who would kind of be not necessarily like a breakout, but I just thought that he would do well enough to where it would give him a little bit of a bump and then he can kind of get the ball rolling and whatnot. But it just didn't go his way at all. And we're going to get hate from the Yang Gang, but sorry, it wasn't a good debate performance.
The Yang Gang who is the Yang Gang? It's literally a bunch of friggin' 4chan trolls, white supremacists and Nazis. Like, where is this Yang Gang? Like, I don't know
if it's real. Like, I think part of it is trolling on Twitter. Like, there is, because I've looked at some of the Reddit threads and I looked at how they responded to like my interview to him. And it was a harsh interview, but it was fair. And they were actually pretty measured. They were like, wow, they were like, fuck this guy. He's a Bernie shill, and he has all this Bernie, like I have a Bernie action figure in the back. So, of course, you know, this is a biased interview, which is true. But they were like, well, you know, the reason why he doesn't like Yang is because Yang wavered on Medicare for All. So this Yang Gang, like, in the way that we are thinking about it or talking about it, I'm not sure if it's just people trolling on Twitter. Like, I'm genuinely not sure.
But you just hit it on the head too. Who is a Andrew Yang supporter who trashes Bernie Sanders? I thought the whole idea was that Andrew Yang's legitimate Democratic base is coming from young people who like this whole UBI thing, who were former Bernie Sanders supporters who think Andrew Yang has got the better plan. Who if they're trashing Bernie Sanders like that, then clearly that's not the case. These people are not, Andrew Yang's not plucking Bernie Sanders supporters off, which I never believed he was doing. This is who I think supports Andrew Yang. Yeah. It's his legitimate support are probably upper class young people in the tech sector. And and even those people are probably more behind like a Bernie Sanders. I'm talking about the specific subset who are all about like the hustle life, who fucking watch Gary Vaynerchuk on Facebook 24/7 and think you need to work like 24/7 to really deserve your minimum wage job or whatever, and that if you really just pulled yourself up by your bootstraps, you would make more money and be successes they are getting loans from their parents. That's the subset of legitimate Democrats that I think Andrew Yang has support from.
I could see that, and I can also see people who just are fixated on that $1,000. And to Andrew Yang's credit, like part of the reason why I was high on him just like as a person and as a candidate is because like I challenged him on my show about this UBI. Like I didn't get why people had to choose between Social Security, which is an earned benefit, and UBI. And like later on, like a month or so, he amended that so that way it is additive. So you're no longer choosing between Social Security and UBI. Now, there's still, I take issue with, choosing between food stamps and anything that takes away at our social safety net, I'm against, right? I support UBI only in the sense that it is supplementing our existing social safety net. So the fact that he still responded to try to, adapt to some of these left-wing concerns is admirable. But in terms of like the support, I feel like, and maybe it's because I heard this analogy on Chapo and it just kind of stuck with me. It's like young people who just want to have $1,000 per month to game, to blow it on Steam or something. And this is an oversimplification, so I don't want people to think that I genuinely...
That's a great point. No.
But yeah. I think it's a lot of people who just don't have a full-scale understanding, and they don't realize how, policy is more complicated. I could see the appeal of $1,000 per month. I absolutely can see that. If you're a young person, totally makes sense. So I think that you're right about it being from like, younger, maybe tech people.
Yeah, the UBI is actually like a left-wing like idea. It's just that like
it depends on how you do it.
Right, totally depends. I'm not going to say I'm someone who knows enough about the general UBI in terms of, but I am someone who's supportive of a left-wing version of a UBI. I think it would be. But see, this is the thing. This is the idea that's incredible to me. Andrew Yang's whole thing about the UBI is that it puts everyone on an equal playing field where everyone gets $1,000 a month to do whatever they want. But then how is it an equal playing field if the rich people also get their $1,000 a month and don't get anything taken away from them? Which I don't think anything should be taken away, obviously, in terms of we should tax them more. Obviously, I'm not saying you want we should be taking away. Social Security benefits or anything like that. We should not be doing that. But so rich people get to keep all their money and get $1,000, whereas people on benefits, they get their $1,000, but they get things taken away. How is that an equal playing field?
That was my entire thing.
Right. How is that equal playing field? It just doesn't make any sense.
I asked him this as well, and he was honest, if I'm thinking of the right question, because I asked him, I'm like, look, my dad actually is on Social Security. He gets $1,300 per month. Why is it that my dad has to choose between UBI and that, but like his friend who isn't on Social Security, who still works, and he just gets an extra $1,000, but my dad technically doesn't get that extra $1,000. Like, don't you think that this isn't universal in a true sense, like universal? And he kind of responded that, it's not perfect. I still think we have to strengthen Social Security and do this and that. But yeah, I agree with you that if you're going to implement UBI, you have to be very specific and do it in a left-wing way, because this can be used very easily as a Trojan horse to gut the social safety net, which is why even some right-wing economists like Milton Friedman supported UBI. This was the one thing that they'd be able to use to take down the social safety net, because once you start, devaluing it in terms of its usefulness, then you can easily chip away at it. You can just say, well, you don't need food stamps, you have UBI now. And I think that is a very dangerous game to play, because then you're not really helping the people who need it the most.
Right. I don't think to not completely trash Andrew Yang, which
I don't want to trash him too.
Right, but not completely trash him. I don't think he is like a right winger or a fascist or whatever, even though his choice of what shows to go on clearly brought that audience to him. You can basically, I've pretty much done it. You could actually trace where the whole alt-right thing came from his supporters back to him showing up on Joe Rogan. That's where it really took off.
Oh, see, because I didn't even know. Like, I didn't know if the alt-right thing was true. Like, I genuinely did not know if these people really authentically supported him. That makes sense. Their whole
belief is that he's going to give them $1,000 and the world is still going to burn. So if the world's going to burn with Trump, why not support Andrew Yang, where the world will still burn, yet they'll get $1,000 a month out of it too? That's their that's their thing. They think everything's going to go to shit no matter what, but with Yang, they'll get money out of it.
That's a really shitty world to have.
Yeah. But I also think that he's like a libertarian tech bro who probably is a Democrat because he's probably a little bit better on social issues than most tech libertarians are. Techno-libertarians are. That's probably his whole
There's
shtick.
libertarian leanings to him that make me feel uneasy. Like, for me, I'm very, very, like, in the democratic socialist camp. Like, the libertarian stuff is automatically going to scare me away. And he just has a lot of libertarian leanings for me. And that's fine. Maybe some people in the Democratic Party support that. Maybe they don't. It's just not my cup of tea. I still think he's a nice guy. And I don't want to shit on him too much. But, yeah, there are things that I have to gripe about, for sure.
Also, I will never support someone whose campaign slogan is about how much they love math. Never in a million years. Well, not gonna happen. Nerd, not gonna happen, butter.
Stuff yourself in a locker, nerd.
Right. So we know who Andrew Yang's audience is. We know who Marianne Williamson's audience is. It's basically your aunt who buys oysters to shuck from those pearl parties on Facebook. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but that's
coffee enemas.
That's totally the Marianne Williamson contingent. Listen, it's really one way to think about how this really to show how this whole thing went is how we're talking about Marianne Williamson and Andrew Yang over legitimate people in office like Tim Ryan and Swalwell and Castro and these other people who were just like. I mean, they're running for name recognition, I guess, but they really put nothing on the table. Like, I honestly don't understand the Castro, the people who really like Castro. I don't know. I'm not anti-Castro. I don't think he's a bad guy. I don't think he's great. I think him and his brother actually have not such a great history in terms of they're basically very like neoliberal on a number of things. I mean, the guy ran HUD and was pilloried for a lot of the things he put forward before he realized, I'm screwing shit up for people. I gotta reverse course. I get it because he's he's a Latino man.
You know what it is? He is strong on immigration. Like, he is very forceful about wanting to repeal Section, 1325 of the U.S. Code, which, for those of you who don't know, it decriminalizes someone crossing the border. It just makes it a civil offense. I think that's great. Like, pushing the Overton window is important, but he's not really doing much to separate himself from the rest of them. Like, he originally was kind of pushing reparations, but he didn't, genuinely come up with this. He was asked about this on a show, and then he started talking about it because he realized it got him some attention. So everything about him is very it's all very smarmy, overly rehearsed, and I don't buy a lot of what he has to say. With that being said, he's not the worst person. He's not the worst candidate. There are worse people, that I would like to see drop out before him. But I'm kind of with you in that I don't really get the appeal of him. He's super knowledgeable about social justice issues and whatnot, and he can talk intelligently about immigration and trans issues for the most part, but there are other people who can do that too, like Cory Booker can do that pretty masterfully. Bernie Sanders doesn't hit the right language that people like, but with that being said, his entire career is great when it comes to this. So I don't know what lane Castro is trying to carve up for himself, and I think that he doesn't really know either, which is why he's not really doing great. Maybe the first debate will give him a bump, but the candidates who are, I think, getting some traction are the ones that do something to set themselves apart. Like, there's so many people in this race: John Delaney, John Hickenlooper, Tim Ryan. They should all be running as one person. There's no reason for them to all be running individually because they're the same person. Like, what's the difference between Tim Ryan and John Delaney?
Well,
I don't know.
Well, Tim Ryan, I gotta tell you, he reminds me so much of Tim Robinson from SNL and his Netflix show. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen the Netflix show.
Oh my god, he looks so much like him. He looks like he's a Tim Robinson character, to be honest with you. It's hilarious. First of all, the show